So, as we can see, why they're not actually talking about it in the news becomes quite evident now. You have this many people that can change the trajectory of an entire country who may or may not ever have supposed to have been there. It's crazy to have a foreigner that has the ability to change the outcome on the soil where Native Americans were born. Like, it mitigates the vote. That's why it's a treasonous act for illegals to vote. But New York City Council passes bill giving voting rights to non-citizens. And the news won't talk about it, obviously, because they never talk about anything of substance. It's completely political, and I think with Trump winning years ago, it set them back so far. So now they're in ultimate acceleration mode. So anyways, New York City, the New York City Council approved a bill Thursday that lets non-U.S. citizens vote in citywide elections. The bill, which allows some 900,000 residents to vote in races for mayor, public advocate, borough president, and city council, was passed 33 to 14. So it's passed overwhelming. These people are trying to destroy it on purpose. Why else would they do that? It's either that or the people who are voting for it, they have dirt on them, so they're getting blackmailed, but somehow I doubt it. Maybe in some instances, but under the bill, people who have lived in the city for at least 30 days and are legal permanent residents in the United States would be allowed to vote. That includes DACA recipients, green card holders, and people with worker permits. That's crazy. So you just come in with a worker permit, it's like, well, I might as well vote while I'm here. Dozens of supporters, and now we see why the border hasn't been more open, I don't think, in the last 30 years. Now we see what they're doing. They're shipping these people in. They've been there for like a month. Doesn't matter. Go ahead and vote. And who do you think they're going to vote for? The people themselves may or may not have malicious intent, but they're being used as a weapon to bring about the destruction of the West and America in particular. But dozens of supporters rallied on the steps of City Hall before the vote, including council members Dennis Rodriguez, who introduced the bill. This is important not only for the city of New York. Rodriguez said there are so many people in Texas and other places that want to push our society back. Push it back. It's funny that they live in an inverted world, whether on purpose or not. Either way, they live in backwards land. They say the right is the treasonous side, yet they stole an election and have been doing some fuck shit ever since. Well, let's be real, they've been doing it even before that for a long time. But the measure will take effect on January 1st and will make New York the largest jurisdiction in the country to expand voting rights to non-citizens. Eligible non-citizens would be able to start registering to vote on December 9th, 2022. See, all this is happening quick. And once registered, could begin voting in local elections as of so by January 9th, 2023, people who are never supposed to be in the U.S. can change the trajectory of a large state in the country, which is just crazy. The bill would also create an advisory group to provide recommendations regarding the implementation of this new municipal voting system. The New York City Board of Elections is now in charge of figuring out how it will be implemented ahead of 2023, city's next local election. Non-citizens with register using different voter registration cards and will vote using a separate ballot on each election day. Kind of reminds me of the mail-in ballots where they're almost a different ballot on purpose. It's almost like if they need the votes, they'll just pull it out of this particular box or something. But Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel released the following statement regarding New York City allowing non-citizens to vote in municipal elections. American citizens should decide American elections, full stop. It's hard to imagine anyone would argue with that. Today's decision in New York is the product of a radical, power-hungry Democratic Party that will stop at nothing to undermine election integrity. Allowing our elections to be decided by foreign citizens is unacceptable and treason, I might add. I even have the definition of treasons coming up, if anyone's curious. And the RNC is looking closely at our legal options as we continue our fight to protect your ballot. Nick Langworthy also released a statement. Today's irresponsible vote by New York City Democrats to give the sacred right to vote to over 800,000 people. Isn't that crazy? That's big enough to change any election. Especially if you're only, the difference is say 10,000 votes, like 800,000. That could make and break. I know it's just for one state, but if they do this large scale across the country, that'll change every election in every state. And that's what they're after. Now we see what the illegals are for. But non-citizens is a dangerous attack on our election integrity, he said. We are now on a slippery slope toward illegal immigrants voting and foreign interference in our elections. We will fight using every legal means necessary to prevent this legislation from becoming law. Stay tuned for further announcements about our legal action. Just before the vote, during a fierce debate, critics of the controversial bill tried to send it back to committee while supporters fought to get it passed. We shouldn't be diluting the value of citizenship, City Council Dave Carr said. Citizenship is something to strive for. Well, it's a reward for good behavior, right? No one needs bottom feeders. Anyone who pays a lot of taxes every year knows what it's like to pay bottom feeders to basically eat and sleep and shit. He doesn't believe it is legal. I'm confident the courts are going to do a plain text reading of the state's constitution and throw it out. Well, it is unconstitutional, and it's treason, high treason. But Mayor de Blasio had expressed mixed feelings about stop short of threatening a veto. I think there's still some outstanding legal questions about the city's authority versus the state's in this matter, he said, but I respect the city council. Mayor-elect Eric Adam agrees with the bill's concept but still has some questions. I'm concerned with aspects of it, he said. Voting is a right. We should always encourage people to become citizens. See how they just keep going left? You can't ever go left enough, but let's look at some more stuff here. So laws permitting non-citizens to vote in the United States, it's written in pretty plain English. How anyone would argue against this unless they didn't have malicious intent is beyond me, so I just have to assume that they have malicious intent. But in 1996, U.S. Congress passed a law prohibiting non-citizens from voting in federal elections, such as U.S. House, U.S. Senate, and presidential elections. Federal law did not address state or local elections. As of March 2020, 2 state constitutions specified that non-citizens may not vote in state and local elections, Arizona and North Dakota's. No state constitutions explicitly allowed non-citizens to vote in state or local elections as of March 2020. 15 municipalities across the country allowed non-citizens to vote in local elections as of January 2022. 11, see what I mean? It's spreading. 11 were located in Maryland, 2 were located in Vermont, 1 in New York City, and the other was San Francisco, California. And we see what they all have in common. They're all blue state shitholes. According to Pew Research Center, there are approximately 25 million non-citizens living in the U.S. as of 2017. 25 million, that's bigger than most countries in like Europe and South America. That's hilarious. Hilarious in a terrifying way. That included 12.3 million permanent residents and 2.2 million temporary residents in the country with legal permission, and 10.5 million living in the country without legal permission. Whether non-citizens should be allowed to vote is a subject of debate. Federal law states that it is unlawful for a non-citizen to vote in federal elections. Boom, right there. And establishes a punishment of a fine, 1 year in prison, or both for violating the law. The Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act of 1996 states the following. It shall be unlawful for any alien to vote in any election held solely or in part for the purpose of electing a candidate for the office of President, Vice President, Presidential Elector, Member of the Senate, Member of the House of Representatives. As it should be. Like, it's not even about common sense anymore. It's about right and wrong, good and evil. That's what it is. But it looks like Wikipedia even changed the definition of it, if I'm not mistaken. Because it says in the federal law that we just read that you can't vote. But it says in here that you can. The right of foreigners to vote in the United States has historically been a contentious issue. A foreigner in this context is a person who is not a citizen of the United States. Since enactment of the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act of 1996, Federal law has prohibited non-citizens from voting in federal elections, punishing them by fines, imprisonment, inadmissibility, and deportation. Exempt from punishment is any non-citizen who, at the time of voting, had two natural or adoptive U.S. citizen parents, began permanently living in the United States before turning 16 years old, and who reasonably believed that he or she was a citizen of the United States. Federal law does not prohibit citizens from voting in state or local elections. It's a bit condescending, but no state has allowed non-citizens to vote in state elections since Arkansas became the last state to outlaw non-citizen voting in 1926. However, in some states, local governments have the power to allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. So I guess at a state level you could vote as an illegal, but at a federal level it's still... That's treason though, obviously. So let's look at the definition of treason here. So the crime of trying to overthrow your country's government or of helping your country's enemies during a war. And as we continue to see what's going on, to undermine and rip out the roots of the country. I mean, that's treason. That's what they're doing. The offense of tempting by overt acts to overthrow the government of the state of which the offender owes allegiance, or to kill or personal injure the sovereign or the sovereign's family. Subgroup is treachery, so let's look at that. Treachery, violation of allegiance or of faith and confidence, an act of perfidy or treason. And it's kind of funny, I was looking at this and it basically reminds me of the mainstream media. Synonyms and antonyms for treachery: backstabbing, betrayal, business, disloyalty, double-cross, faithlessness, falseness, falsity, infidelity, perfidy, sellout, treason, two-timing, unfaithfulness. You could basically just put CNN here as a picture with a subgroup with the lines coming out, and they fit every single one of these. Obviously, all the corporate media is bad, but CNN in particular, and they also lost 90% of their ratings. But I'd like to show a video about this Bezmenov guy. I'm sure some of you have seen him, but he goes into great detail. And it's a pretty old video, but it basically could have been recorded yesterday, and it would make perfect sense. But because he came from Russia, he understands all too well that the media was never elected, yet they have more power than any sitting politician. So let's take a look.
They are the only solutions. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight. If we are talking about capitalists or wealthy businessmen, I think they are selling the rope on which they will hang very soon. If they don't stop, if they cannot curb their unsettled desire for profit, and if they keep on trading with the monster of the Soviet communism, they are going to hang very soon. And they will pray to be killed, but unfortunately they will be sent to Alaska probably to manage industry of slaves. It's simplistic. I know it sounds unpleasant. I know Americans don't like to listen to things which are unpleasant. But I have defected not to tell you the stories about such idiocy as microfilm, James Bond type espionage. This is garbage. You don't need any espionage anymore. I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system.